questions, we'll take 3 questions at a time. Is that okay with them? Or?
Yeah.
Go ahead, folks. If you need the mic, it's here. You can pass it around.
So this Delhi-Mumbai corridor.
Sorry, could you see your name?
Yeah, Raka Sinha. Raka Sinha. This Delhi-Mumbai corridor, is it the construction of the road is not over at the moment?
I have to follow that. I mean, there was an order recently from the PMO's office to halt a few road projects, but which ones I have to find out which projects are.
But why would they want to halt the road project? I mean, what would be the reason for that?
I'm speculating it's balance of payments. So, because the acquisition of land for these roads, so it's quite an interesting model in which these roads are or these projects are developed. So the acquisition of land happens through taxpayer money and through public funds, but the infrastructure, the profitable infrastructure, and the cities are developed through private finance, transnational private finance. So. I'm guessing like it's sort of like an imbalance in.
Why would they build the road if the money is not?
Yeah. So the money is not coming back as much.
You know, the government's plan of smart cities. Is that a good idea or is it not a good idea?
Should I take 3 questions?
We'll take 3 questions and you can choose to. Next, somebody else have their answer? So stand with the mic.
Hi, I'm Lakshya, and I wanted to kind of, not more of a question, but kind of suggestion and mixed question. Is that when we were talking about that there is a sacred ecology to it, and in terms of more in terms of land, right? So I was wondering if you could also talk about that how there was a traditional authority which was involved in villages. I mean, kind of middlemen which have to become now. So the people who hold in large amount of lands are the people who are also making this unauthorized colony and kind of making a way for this unauthorized colony. So there is a change of traditional authority which is translating into kind of new authority. Like DMIC has its own, authority which has been put in place. So in all these places there are different institutional elements which are so power is kind of shifting, but also more centralized into the previous landlords or something. So how that translates? Yeah. So and the next one is about if I may ask is about the how more of it is also focused on middle class, such as middle class activities, such as the protests regarding the Aravali Biodiversity Park. So I'm kind of locating within the arguments of Srivastava and both of Sujata Patel that the kind of organization which are moving forward to is a more of a middle class based activism, and that is how the activism is also based on focus through middle class. So how much that is kind of a relate to question which are again there are multiple solidarities which are emerging in the field. Kind of 2 questions.
I have 2 questions. One is related to housing. I've been going to Nimrana a lot recently, and particularly the Japanese zone. And if you look at housing there, so you have this new model emerging. In my sense, it's new, different from Kapasera or IMT, where you have these absolutely no provision for workers' housing, and it's all like private run. But these kind of settlements. But if you look at Nimrana and further down the DMIC corridor, you have these private builders entering into workers' housing. So if you look at these, so down the highway you have these big apartment blocks which are lying empty because because the real estate boom is down and there are no takers. But the new trend is probably, I want to ask you whether it's further down or in the new trend, or is it just specific to Nimrana and this sort of Japanese zone that workers' housing has become this sort of terrain where private, big real estate players are getting into. That's one. And secondly, with regard to Albert, again, you spoke about. Can I just not use the mic? It just makes me. Yeah.
Just put it in front of you. Just put it on the table in front.
Okay. Secondly, about the sort of environmental commons and the sacred, the movement about the specific group called Krapapas. Yeah, I don't know about it, but I want to know what category or what social class within the villages is it addressing it? Because in my own sense, the Jats and the Yadavs in all these places have emerged out to be the local, I mean the landlord class, right, the traditional landlord class, who are the local authority figures. I mean, the main conflict with the workers is primarily with this class of people. So I want to know, like, which section in Alvar or in these areas is this sort of ecological movement really appealing?
Can you also introduce yourself?
My name is Aja.
Nitin, do you want to answer?
Yeah, smart. So, Rakha, smart cities, good idea or not? I think I'm not researching on smart cities per se, but yeah, I think there's a lot of people researching on it, and I think they can offer. What I've read is that it's mixed. Like, of course, it's quite unequal, and there's really an urgent need to address the social question there. But it's a new model, and I think time will tell. I'm not so familiar. Like, I'm not quite an expert on smart city. Lakshay, the traditional authority, power shifting. So you were talking about power shifting. So I didn't quite get the DMIC shift, but I mean, yeah, as you said, Arya, like there is a consolidation of this sort of like so within this huge migrant or tenement town that it becomes, there's a sort of like a almost ruling elite. And the sarpanch usually becomes like a very important figure even after the Gram Panchayat is removed from there. So there is consolidation of traditional roles, I think. Maybe that's what you were asking, right? Middle class activism focused, yeah. Actually, Shubhra Gururani also wrote about it, and I think someone else. Can't remember now. But yeah, a few people have written about this elite, double-edged exclusion and bourgeois movements, bourgeois environmentalism. I think personally, there is an urgent need to do something about it. Like about, about the biodiversity loss, and also the spaces that these parks are coming in. I mean, so for example, Nathupur village, no? So I did quite a few interviews in Nathupur village to see if these guys use the park. Actually, they go and use the park every day, and they really. So I think the bourgeois environmentalism somehow I couldn't make the sense of the argument on the ground. It seems quite interesting and exciting as a concept. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I live in Gurgaon, and the picture, that pledge picture, is actually there when that whole thing was happening. And even within the elite in Gurgaon, there's a section that's doing this, and the other section is saying that you bought your houses. So it's exactly the conversation in like the Paris climate conversation between them. It's the same conversation. So there are people saying, you've already bought your houses and you've already done this. So now you want to save the forests. Where were the forests part of your concern when you were buying your houses in Gurgaon? Which is the other section of the elite, or saying it to this section. So I think it's not a monolith in that sense, but it's true that they have not been able to really build solidarities with other sections in Gurgaon, partly because the other two sections are either landlords from urban villages or who use these parks, but I think they don't quite see the benefit in being part of this, because they have actually lost this long time ago. They lost this in the 80s. So it's like that. And the others are migrant workers who are in any case not invested in these other things. So who do they build these solidarities with is maybe a question that they're sort of trying to grab.
Migrant workers come and use it, but, and the people I talk to, they find it quite quite a nice space that they would like to revisit. And there's also, I mean, even in the bourgeois, so quote unquote bourgeois, whatever you consider bourgeois, I mean, I think what I find quite hopeful, and I look for hopeful ecologies within this is there's a lot of people who come with Pradeep Kishan's books, for example, and look for biodiversity, which as a kid I would not have done. So it's sort of like a larger ecology as well. So I think the bourgeois environmentalism question is a good question to ask, but yeah, I mean it's I don't see where it's sort of geared towards, you know. So I think over time, sort of these solidarities would develop. It's of course an elite project, but then women's right is also bourgeois elite projects. You know, should we give it up? Also, all of these are bourgeois values. You know, so I mean, should we give up bourgeois values? I would argue not. I mean, that's my argument. Like, I mean, I think species extinction, ecology, these are very urgent questions where we need to.
In the case of Gurgaon, it's water and air.
Yeah.
Last year, when the most polluted city in the world, whatever headline came, the city just sort of erupted into panic. And that sort of stuff catalyzes this. And water is obviously sitting on a huge water crisis. So those are the two questions that have really brought this whole, more than the biodiversity, I think that's beginning to really catalyze this.
I really like your question. I've been doing a lot of like visual analysis of Neemrana from above, because what I did was when I identified. No, satellite imagery. No, but after I identified these typologies, I could find them in a lot of different places much further down. So in Bhiwadi, like around Bhiwadi, all villages are full of this. But I couldn't find for some reason in Neemrana, and it somehow intrigued me. I have to visit it. And I think this is quite interesting what you're saying about the middle class housing becoming worker housing over time. I think this is quite interesting, and I would be interested to know more about it. But yeah, this is not what I've observed in other places. And yeah, somehow Neemrana has always been a question mark which I've tried to address in some time.
One last
Crap.
comment is that I think the biggest compromise about what happened in Mysore was that if you go to the police station, you have like Maruti written on all the chairs in the police station in Mysore. So apart from all the CSR projects that people
This is infrastructure. I mean, it's basically infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
You're sitting on a chair.
But literally like state institutions, being run by corporations.
Yeah. No, but I think also the question you asked about Krapavis is quite interesting. So they mostly work in South Alwar district, where urbanization is happening now. Like urban land is getting created now. So there's a lot of people from Gurgaon who are landowners who are moving to villages there, buying land, converting or waiting on it. But these guys, Krapavis, they're engaging with rural communities. So they're not the same kind of villages as we see here. They're not migrant villages yet. So it's really the rural communities they're engaging with. I haven't gone deep into the social structure of the community itself, but what I observed is that they engage quite a lot. They sort of have this model in which the panchayat is contributing 80% of the funds on sort of restoring the sacred ecologies. So I think then it becomes more inclusive in that case. Yeah.
Second round?
Let's quickly pick up one issue here. And then after this question to Maruti Sheikh.
Reason I find it interesting is we have had corporate super right after the event. Raukela, Pillai, many, Bokaro, there's a whole bunch of them. And it's not just, there's also some shapeholders. meet up over the restructuring. I'm curious about what is it that now, so this tension between when corporates take on public responsibility, does the state somehow feel inhibited in exercising sovereign power? This is a tension that's actually been there for a very long time and across geographies. General Popper's aircraft is the same. So to what extent is this phenomenon, why does it agitate you now? And to within, I'm just curious, just as a question of how it comes through. And do you see anything different? I mean, since you are adopting this broad historical perspective, I would be really curious in understanding how you see Maruti in its current location to where it's moving, its old plant in Gurgaon, next to Kapasera structure and so on and so forth, and this new modernized sort of created zone of mindset. Are the two Marutis that you see different?
Thank you very much. You have spoken very nicely. But my question was that when we are, making some urban sort of a structure in highways, we have to keep in our mind that it is going to increase the density of that area, will increase. We have done some work in NSG Manesar also. They have about 500 acres of area. And the first point was that to give them a water. So we did about 3 exploratory drillings there. Now, for such an area, Aramali is water scarce area. And I am asking that not from the water bodies they have to have it. There are a lot of structure which is required in designing an urban structure. It can be a market, it can be a park, it can be a playground for children. It can be a bigger roads because and once you know that this much of population is there, so many cars will be there, so they will ply on that road, and that road has to take the burden of those cars. So is from your research point of view, do you feel that everything is okay there? I want your opinion. Yeah, because I have visited a very small township in Australia, and it was a very small township, but it was loaded with all the urbans which we need: mall, restaurants, nice roads, everything was there. And it didn't look like a village, it looked like a very urban space with each and everything loaded, and the design was excellent. And whereas I see that not only in this, even if you go to the National Highway 1 to Faridabad, any place, to Bulandshahr side, you will find only the population on the road. Nobody has done any work either to have a Bhagavad or to have some, anything which is urgently required by those people. And unless and until you give them a better facilities, the standard of those people will not rise. Even the primary schools are loaded with such shabby things, and even the colleges, whatever you see, you find it in degraded conditions. So how is your take on, while you are coming from Switzerland and you have done research there, so when you move around there, what do you find that, is it okay? Because from a point of view, from a hypothetical construction, if you move to a better site, it is always good, but it should be planned very clearly. It should go clear. So what do you say on this? Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil. I found the talk quite interesting, beginning from the title itself, Delirious City, and I think it attracted a lot of us. But we didn't see much realism in your conclusion, so I would like to see more of that. But I understand you have structured your analysis around conflicts. And one kind of conflicts in urban sprawl that is taking place in India around many large cities, where agricultural land is being converted into legal or illegal real estate development. And one of those conflicts is between the displaced and this elite people who are buying housing in very high class residential areas. Some in independent bungalows, farmhouses, and the others in condominiums. So, do you see evidence of such conflict in the NCR region that you have studied between the displaced and the settlers? Solidarity doesn't exist and will not come for a very long time. But there are some examples that one has read in the newspapers, of course, is that people whose land was acquired, in retrospect going back and demanding more price and more compensation. So the compensation was inadequate, unfair, wrongly assessed, not futuristic, they didn't get a bit of pie in the future development. So all this has created unhappiness, but has it resulted in conflict between these two groups of people or not? Do you have any comments on that? Thank you.
Great round of questions. I'm going to start with the last one, actually. Yeah, I mean, there are social conflicts. So, on Dwarka Expressway, for example, I think that's a really good site to explore these conflicts. So, there's a lot of robberies, for example. So, people whole families get robbed with their car and everything that's there. And it's most of the times, what I've heard in the interviews is at the time of these robberies, they talk about, they talk about the social distance, that you guys came and you have dispossessed us, and we don't have so much, and you are living such a luxurious life there. So this is sort of like at the everyday level. I mean, these conflicts in the everyday life, there are these conflicts as well. I think that's about what I'm seeing. Like, this sort of like unsafe or walled city almost that's getting built, like sort of walling yourself out from the other social classes. Others I can't think of at the moment, but I think that's a good line to get thinking at. There are these everyday conflicts also that are emerging around this. I think I should explore this more in my work. What Partha and you asked, I think, were a little bit complementary as well. I think Partha, what's different between corporate cities and what's happening here is that it lacks everyday quality, like it lacks urban qualities. So in these tenement towns, there is no urban qualities compared to like corporate towns that were built in other areas where there was parks that were planned. For example, if you see in Manesar, I mean, there are golf courses and there are like amenities that can be monetized, but there are there's a lack of public spaces and qualities in general. Like, and I think what's different also is that is the intent. So in these corporate towns, there is a social responsibility to house migrants, for example. And here, uh, the intended idea is to actually externalize this and to create more surpluses through externalizing housing and waste segregation. So there is whatever's been externalized, you see in a state of chaos in sort of this corporate, new corporate town that's emerging. So you have like waste, dumps of waste in these ponds and uh, just on the foothills of the hills. So and the chemicals are just released like that. I think the difference is the externalization, in my opinion. The,
It's an externalization without regulation.
without regulation.
Unregulated.
Black, yeah, almost like a black boxing of this externalized things. I think the water. I mean, for example, yeah,
Your opinion about it.
yeah. So in Ko, one of the villages around Manesar, there is no groundwater left. So groundwater is also over. So as part of this infrastructure compromise, they had to ask Maruti Suzuki. So everyone in these villages are asking for specific kinds of infrastructure. So in Ko village, the Gram Panchayat asked for the treated sewage water of Maruti Udyog to be pumped into the pond of Ko, the old pond of Ko. So there is a groundwater that's available to them. Yeah, there is a lot of stress, I think, and it's of course it's kind of a very bizarre state of urbanization in these places, like outside in the region. But yeah, I mean there is like, for example, in New Palam Vihar, there are like opportunities for improvement as well, of asking for network services and of thinking about like ecological replenishing. Yeah, so there is both it is also the condition is bad, but there are also possibilities to alter them.
Wherever there is a Japanese intervention of development, they always go for golf courses because that is their first liking, and they want, without that they cannot, do the golf. This is the entire.
Do you see any difference between old Gurgaon and the engagement of the state? The Jyot Vihar, which is also a Maruti-led kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Manasar,
I think your question of the old corporate India and the rise, I think housing wasn't a state subject then. Housing was a need that we're creating this infrastructure far from everywhere. So we'll provide everything as long as you come and stay. I think that sense of responsibility that the corporate side just isn't there anymore.
Old corporate used to provide the club and the
I have a response to what you asked actually. So I think what's happening right now is that the idea behind the IMT was to spatialize this new economic order, which you just pointed out. But the idea was that it would subsume all the other ones. So you see, how Udyog Vihar works right now, HSIDC works. It's really hard to see what was before. This new form of production has taken over HSI, the Udyog Vihar as well. So Kapaseda is actually a tenement town of Udyog Vihar. So yeah, and there are Dundaheda, all the towns around it are actually serving it. But it must, I'm assuming, and actually I talked to people about how it was before, like before the 90s, like because at that time, quite early on, Kapaseda had started to develop a rentier economy. But what the people told me there is that it used to be radically different. Like, there were there was some sort of like responsibility in housing, no? So to to. It was not just this construction of tenements, like rapid construction of tenements, but there would be very few people who would actually live in Kapaseda. And workers, like they had like a greater choice of housing. So even in Udyog Vihar, I think they did not provide housing, but there were mostly workers from Haryana at that time on permanent contracts, and there were also ways of providing them transport to come there. Now most of the people, the contracts are so casualized that most of the people can afford only to walk to work. So a lot of these tenement towns are coming next to industrial. But yeah, Udyog Vihar has changed completely now. It's hard to read how it must have been. Yeah.
Yes, Steve. I'm sorry. The reason I gave you the microphone was because I was responding to an issue that you raised, so in case you had a response.
Yeah, just one thing. My own sense is that, like you pointed out, I mean, the earlier, the sort of industrial complexes had a certain commitment to say workers' housing or like schools for workers' kids and that kind of a welfareist orientation, which none of these new planned towns have. I mean, I don't know about, maybe Nitin knows better, that whether in the plan itself originally there was provision for workers' housing or not. But in reality, like there's just no provision, is my sense, in the plan itself for workers' housing or you know that, I mean, I feel that phase of industrialization was driven by the sort of like a little bit of planned economy commitment to the nation's development, and there was all that rhetoric that also drove that sort of welfareist commitment, which is not the case, I feel, at the moment at all in any of these new industrial areas. If you look at the DMIC corridor, Manesar, Nimrana, none of them have like, there are no public transport, there's no like toilets, none of them in planned townships. Like that's the sort of, you know, that's the way it's been planned. And yeah, so it's just, yeah, that's and Marzi, I feel that it's just very specifically the CSR is driven post 2012 conflict. So it's also related to their hiring policy. So they don't hire in so many kilometers radius of villages where they do CSR.
Yeah.
And they hire only beyond 140 or 200 kilometers.
To prevent unionization.
Yeah, because there was a lot of support, local support initially to the workers. So to utilize that, they shifted their hiring policy and then they initiated CSR in the local villages. So that's how they neutralized and managed the conflict. It's got to do with that also.
So, I have a question which I'm so stupid, it will give you an opportunity to summarize.
Let me.
So, what you've taken us through is the historical transformation of the region, right? And you've explained the processes of how it occurs. But I think what I'm interested in is what is your punchline on it? What do you mean? I think a lot of this information is sort of available to this community, at least urban planning professionals or whatever you want to call them, and they are all aware of these processes, and you've linked them together in a sort of narrative. But what is, like, you get a glimpse of what you think is the solution, like, you know, the municipal socialism worked for a different country in a different era. But what would work here? I mean, my 2 cents is that no one in the history of humanity has ever faced a problem of this magnitude, and to expect any one person to have the answer is sort of not fair. But what is your take?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I think what's happening at the moment, like in the last 2 weeks, I think is quite a liminal moment when I think it's showing, the economy is showing sign of burning out from this exponential land-based sort of logic, expansive logic. And there would of course be a slowdown, and there's also an increasing idea of rethinking the ecological question. No, so I think in this slowdown there would be a lot of conversion, for example, conversion of the housing stock. What would happen to the housing stock in Nimrana, for example? Who's going to live there? Who's going to occupy? I at the moment could not find it, but there is some sort of these conflicts that are emerging. They point to something that could be on the horizon, which is sort of some sort of co-optation of these huge infrastructures that have got constructed and of all the built environment that's there. So there's some sort of socialization that would happen of this, I'm predicting, over time.
Repurposing, you mean?
Repurposing, yeah. As in yeah.
I just have an observation on that. A lot of the distressed office space in that area is now being owned by multinational corporations, which are investing into Indian developers. Do you think that is going to happen at the rural housing level as well? Like, for instance, DLF is part owned by GAC and Embassy and Endeavors, they're all going in that direction. So, do you see that happening in housing as well? Especially tenement housing, at least at that level.
I think tenement housing is another sort of, it's another economy. What's happening in Kapaseda, for example, is a lot of jobs are moving out of Udyog Vihar, and there's gentrification. There's the concrete structure of the tenement. It becomes 2 BHK houses, which are quite affordable for someone who's earning 15,000 per month. Let's say, they're not that expensive to buy. So what I'm foreseeing is, at least in the tenement towns, not talking about the large offices owned by multinationals, but these tenement towns, there's going to be some repurposing happening there, and also on the access to infrastructure as well. There's some sort of compromises that would emerge there. But I think the speculative office spaces, I'm not sure also. Maybe they actually run on being empty now. So I guess there's.
The solutions question is a bit unfair for the kind of exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not, you can't have a big solution when you just have a building blocks of what the problem is.
No, so at the moment there's elections in Haryana, and I think it's quite heated up. Yeah. So the tagline there is Mano again, which is Manohar Lal Khattar again, instead of Namo again. And it's very innovative. And so I think there it's quite a. So one question I really pose to everyone, what's going to happen if the economy collapses, no? I think everyone is quite happy from the land being acquired and this expressway being built, and nobody sees it as necessarily being something bad or wrong. Actually, everyone just wants to profit out of what's happening there. So I think there's going to be a political intensification of some sort of profit making. So if it's not coming through big capital, it's going to be through profit making of some other kind, no? Which I'm struggling with knitting it, but yeah.
One is
the state in your narrative has been drawn across multiple fronts. One is the ecological front. The second is this provision of basic social services and education. And in some sense, it has, what you're saying, advanced on this front of providing infrastructure, opening up. It's almost, your narrative of the Dwarka Expressway is almost similar to the railroads opening up the sort of west of the US and something. Whereas this is like a little stone's throw from the national capital. So, how do you read these processes, the underlying motivations of the processes within the state? Why, in your narrative, is the state behaving as it is? Is it withdrawing from the ecology? How much of it is, so there's a standard neoliberal answer, right? All of this is to help capitalism and make profits. That's one answer. There is the other answer, which basically you mentioned when you're talking about the court case and the Expressway, where all these people are affected are really not legitimate people in these particular spaces. They may have been legitimate in a different time and space, but now that this is a modern space, these people are not modernized themselves. It's almost like having a 1930s car on a 2030 expressway. So now these people, if you are not modernized, too bad you have to disappear. Is that, and where does the electoral politics sort of work with that particular space? Is it the case that in Delhi, the reason you can sort of treat people in that fashion is because the persons making these decisions are not subject to electoral control at the local level, whereas let's say in a place like Manesar, there might be. And is there, do you see any evidence of that kind of structure? Finally, in these questions of issues that come up with both CSR, do you therefore see do you see the state as becoming quote unquote partial as because it is given up and withdrawn from these social services and allowed other people to take over? Is there a quid pro quo there? Which says, okay, since you are doing this, next time you're on a red light, I'll not come after you. It's more than that. What is there a quid pro quo, or is it simply this whole idea of a CSR which says that, which is what industry thinks of it, 2% extra tax, why are we doing this? It's supposed to be state's job, we're actually bad at it, but you're forcing us to do this, we're trying the best we can, but it's really not something we're supposed to do. That's one of the matters. So on the ground, when you are sort of in all your interview structures, etc., what is your sense of the narrative? What is your sense of the multiplicity of narratives that are sort of playing around at the moment? I mean, are there, when you're talking to people, when you're talking to the Punjab person, when you're talking to the local, as you said, this Federation of Auto Brokers at the highway, or people living in these tenements, migrant workers, or former villagers who are now around here in that kind of structures, managers of industrial firms, bureaucrats running these kind of places, do you find people trying to sort of provide different narratives, or is this something that people are not doing at all? It's like a Charlie Chaplin's modern time stuff that people are just sort of, at this point in time is what I'm doing. Why am I doing it? What is not? It's not for me to think why I'm doing it. Is that narrative that belongs to yes, which in some sense people are investing in, talking about. The elections in the recent past we're talking about it did have a variety of narratives which people brought into. So what is the narrative that people are different people are buying into it.
In one of the interviews, I think something that was really interesting, and I filmed this interview because I'm working on a film. It's as well documentary film on the Dwarka Expressway, and this guy said, "जब शहर भी आ गया, कहर भी आ गया." So it was like the city came, but also the disaster came with it. So he's a farmer. So a lot of people living in these tenement towns, these Yadavs, for example, they maintain some relationship with farming still afterwards. And then he was like, his fields are completely run over by sewage that's released. So what he was trying to say is that he could make a lot of money, and he explains that in the interview. He could make a lot of money from the land deals, which came to a stop after demonetization. But it also brought a disaster to the land and to the larger ecology. But at the same time, even if he doesn't make money after so much money after demonetization, he was quite supportive. This person in particular of what's happening, because it creates a more formal economy, in his opinion. So there is quite a lot of support there. So, for example, in the tenement towns, there is after demonetization, there is an interesting banking system that has developed, which is through this NovoPay applications, these mobile phone applications, which allows you to actually withdraw money as well. So through a swipe of the finger, you can actually withdraw money from your bank account, and you can also transfer it to Bihar or wherever you're coming from. There is also I think the in this multiple portrayals, the red line or the picture that is coming across at the moment is sort of like this formalizing of economy and of processes at the level of the discourse. What's the actual picture is quite different. It's actually not formal at all. Like it's quite it has quite a lot of loops and kickbacks. So a lot of people are buying into this sort of like formalizing argument at the moment. So they're accepting whatever is coming, the kind of developmentalism that's coming through the argument that, okay, there will be a time when everything would be sort of like formal and transactions would be clear. The first question, you were asking about the state motivations of the state.
Drawing,
Yeah.
It's also extending.
Yeah.
Infrastructure and drawing in terms of providing services and ecological protection.
Yeah. So I think it's driven by some really powerful actors. So in the launch of the expressway project, the Delhi-Jaipur expressway, so the transport minister, rather, he announced that the process, how it was planned, how this infrastructure was planned, and it was actually just four people who drove, who sort of like decided how it's going to flow, like how the infrastructure is going to flow, which is quite different than how things would have happened in the train era, or like even in previous cycles of development. It's actually very few powerful actors involved in this process. So in the Nitin Gadkari team, there's four people included. One was from the World Bank. So it's the number of actors involved in decisions is decreasing, and they are also sort of like quite powerful. So I mean, the underlying motivation is of personal power, and it's not democratic anymore. No, so it's democratic in the sense that there is no committees, or there is no elaborate committees. It's a few people making decisions behind closed doors and sort of like, and then these are announced behind big spectacles, like the launch of the expressway. So yeah, that's my understanding.
Do you see any difference in kind of democratic control or restraint in a state like Haryana versus in a place like Delhi, which has, let's say, less empowerment in these kind of issues?
So Dwarka Expressway, I think interestingly, so why it's still an island infrastructure is actually because of the democratic processes that still remain in Delhi, because it required quite a lot of tree cutting in the green belt of Delhi, which the Delhi government put its foot down, saying, actually, we won't allow any trees to be cut. We don't care. It's not a infrastructure that was coordinated with the National Capital Region Planning Board. We were never consulted. Delhi government was never consulted. So it might as well not connect to Delhi. You connect it to NH8 back again. So yeah, there is quite a lot of difference in how processes, at least for now, how processes are being run on the Delhi side and on Haryana. There are differences.